Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Touchdown Tuesdays, the official football podcast of Brew Sports. I am Ian DeMars alongside Ryan Solomon. Ryan, we had an interesting week this last week. We didn't have any big time football besides the Pro Bowl. We're just getting set for the Super Bowl coming up, had a big media day, and we also have a surprise guest appearance coming on the show as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's been, even though it's been a football-less week, it is never really a football-less week, especially leading up to the Super Bowl with all the media day coverage and all the speculation stories surrounding it. But let's welcome our guest. Ian, why don't you give a warm welcome to David Anderson?
Yep, David Anderson. It's been a while since he's been on the show. Welcome back to Touchdown Tuesdays, David. How are you doing today?
Yeah, guys, it's great to be back. Thanks for having me. It's always a blessing to be back on.
Awesome, and we're glad to have you on again. But yeah, let's get to the Super Bowl talk. So, media, or as the NFL now calls it, it's no longer media day. It's now called Super Bowl opening night. Just happened, and we had a lot of interesting things that happened this past Monday. We had some stories in regards to Tom Brady, where the questions of him possibly retiring came up. There were reports of possibly Rob Gronkowski retiring. Even talks about Devin McCourty possibly retiring after the game. So let's start off with just these three stories. So of these three, which one of them do you think is most likely to retire at the end of the year?
You can take this one first, David.
All right. To me, I just think it's Rob Gronkowski. I think he's just been on the fence a lot for the last couple of years, and this year again he missed a number of games like he usually does. And I think right now, if he retired, especially if they win and he retired, he can go off and do a lot of things. He's already expressed some interest in Hollywood and acting, and he would be a great personality on radio shows or as spin-off actors or like whatever he wants. I think he's been through like a very grueling career because of how big he is. Takes all these hits to the knees. I think he is the most likely guy to go out.
I would have to agree with that, and I think you can do it sort of by process of elimination here. So Devin McCourty still probably has some good years left in him. He doesn't really take as much punishment as Rob Gronkowski does, as David mentioned. And then you look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady has been a guy who's been very adamant that he's going to play football basically as long as he possibly can. So if he wins the Super Bowl or loses the Super Bowl, I don't think there's any chance that he retires. And until you see a really, really, really significant drop-off in Tom Brady's play, I don't think we even have to ask the question right now.
Yeah, looking at it, a lot of me wanted to say Rob Gronkowski because, as you guys are saying, there's a lot of possibilities that can line up for him after this. The rumors of him wanting to go Hollywood and start an acting career. There's even some rumors that he could possibly go to WWE. He made a flash appearance at WrestleMania a few years ago. But I think that McCourty is the one that's likely to return. The reason why I say this is because he has the opportunity to play with Jason McCourty. He's talked about how this is like a dream come true for him. Both McCourties playing on the same team in the biggest game of their lives. And you want to know what? Even if they lose this game, I could possibly see him retiring just because if they play a phenomenal game and those two are impact players, I mean, you can't really leave on a higher note. I mean, yeah, it'd be unfortunate if they lose the game, but sometimes some of these high or emotional moments are what can drive people to retire. So I think in this case, I think McCourty would actually be the one to retire. Rob Gronkowski, I don't see him necessarily retiring until we see Tom Brady retiring. And at this point, it's going to be at least 4 years because Brady said it's going to be until he's 45. So I think just based off of that, I'm going to go off emotional play here, and I think it's going to be McCourty. I mean, do you guys have any thoughts on McCourty, or do you kind of think it's just kind of emotions going through him?
I mean, I'm just sort of thinking about the relevancy of the three players mentioned, and I think that out of the three, Devin McCourty is honestly the least relevant in terms of the Patriots' future, in terms of the Patriots' output the next couple of seasons. So it's kind of like when you think about the bigger stories, would Devin McCourty retiring really even be a huge story? Not so much, probably. And he's finally with his brother, as you mentioned, and they still have a solid team, even if they lose, even if they win. They're going to have good years left, so I don't really know why any of the players would want to retire except for specific injury concerns, which is why I'm still kind of sticking to Rob Gronkowski, because he is a pretty big guy who does get beat up a lot. And we've seen him get beat up over the past couple of years. We've seen him have a lot of injuries he's had to rehab from. And we know that the team already tried to part ways with him once. So I could kind of see a situation where if things go really well in the Super Bowl for Gronkowski, maybe he gets like an MVP or something like that, I could definitely see him going out on a higher note.
Yeah, I agree with that. The last time that Rob Gronkowski finished all 16 games of a regular season was back in 2011. That was like 7 years ago at the beginning of his career. I'm still sticking with Rob Gronkowski. He's got such a bright future ahead of him. He's got great personality. He can do a lot of things. I think he may stick out one more year. I honestly think all three will be on the Patriots next year. All their contracts go through next year, and Gronkowski's contract expires in 2019. Maybe that's when he does it. Especially if they lose, I think that they all stay. If they win, I would take the small better's chance on Gronkowski being the only Patriot retiring.
Especially, too, just because they talked about trying to trade him already. So they're clearly not sold on him being a big centerpiece of the franchise. So there's not going to be a lot of pull for him to be staying unless it's from individual players. Like, the management isn't going to be like, Rob, we need you. You have to come back, which I think is a lot of times a big reason why some of these players stick around for extra seasons. So I see him being the most likely to be cut loose by the ownership, too. So I think that factors into it as well.
Yeah, and as you guys mentioned, the result of this game plays a huge factor into this. When we saw this last year, there were the reports on Gronkowski wanted to retire last year. It just didn't seem right with them losing. And then there are also reports about Brady, but as we saw this year, Brady still clearly has some years left in him.
Mm-hmm.
So even if they do lose, it's likely they could all come back. A win could change a lot of this for not just Gronkowski or McCourty, but even Brady. I would consider he might think about it just a little bit more. But those are some things we'll just have to wait till after the Super Bowl to start questioning. Some other things that we did also notice from opening night, we saw a couple of funny stories happen. So there was a young kid reporter asking Tom Brady about haters. That one was pretty interesting. We saw Andrew Whitworth's son ask Jared Goff about if he could get a shark if they were to win the Super Bowl. And then we also saw a couple of reporters actually give gifts to the Patriots. One was to Tom Brady, which was a pillow with his face on it, and the other one was for Bill Belichick, and it was a poncho. So out of all those stories, which one would you say is kind of the most bizarre for a media story?
I really liked the Andrew Whitworth's kid asking Jared Goff for a shark, and I liked Jared Goff's response. It was like so plain and simple, like, yes, I will get you a shark if we win. And I think that if they do win, I totally see him following through on this, because there's a bunch of sharks that you could get for like an aquarium or something that, you know, are technically sharks, but they're on the smaller side. So I'd really like to see this bet followed through on. If it happens. But on the Brady thing, did anybody else notice that we've gotten to the point where Brady is basically like a father, like a dad at a school dance? Like, it doesn't really feel like he belongs with the rest of the people there, and he's kind of trying to fit in and act cool, but it just doesn't really come off as working out.
I've always thought Brady has been really goofy his entire life in his career. You go back to, like, they have him almost in the whitey tighties at like the NFL Combine, like the viral post of his 40. Like, I just think he just is just so goofy, and I think that's been his persona his whole life. Like, he's just genuinely trying to be him, and just comes off as this weird, like, genius awkwardness that he has.
It's like if Sheldon Cooper played football, kind of, but like mix it also with like a father. You know, like that's the vibe that he puts off. It's like Tom Brady, most people probably don't like him. He's on the Patriots. He wins all the time. They're tired of him. And he's like trying to show that he's like cool and that you should like him, but it just kind of comes off as like some bizarre thing. I don't know. That's just the vibe I got from him. Like when he got the presents, he was just kind of like, oh yeah, my face is on it and there's hearts on it. It's just like, I don't know. He doesn't come off as a real person to me.
I mean, but if you look at the rally that they had before they went to Atlanta, you could definitely see that there was a huge emotional side of Brady that kind of doesn't even make him look like a father. It kind of makes him look like a hypothetical sport or hypothetical sports fan in some cases.
I mean, we know he has a deeply competitive side. That's one thing that we've seen all along, and I think that's why it's weird as he gets older to sort of see other sides of him other than just that fierce competitor in his prime, because he's starting to sort of transition out of that leadership role and starting to go more toward mentorship. I know the two are very similar, but I see it as a difference in his career, whereas earlier he was basically the centerpiece of this whole thing, and now he's sort of like the guy who was almost perhaps traded, and they almost kept Jimmy Garoppolo. So now it's kind of Tom Brady overseeing this whole thing, trying to get the pieces to fit together well enough. It just seems like it's a different dynamic than it used to be for the Patriots from what I can see from media day.
Yeah, I would definitely agree on that. I thought it was interesting looking at the whole Bill Belichick poncho situation, because looking at Bill Belichick, obviously, when you see him on the sidelines, there's a lot of times where you see him on the sidelines, and he's wearing a sweatshirt that has like half the arm sleeves cut off. So it's fitting that a reporter actually got him a poncho that actually kind of fits that mold. So that hats off to that reporter for knowing Bill Belichick's style. I'm not sure if we're ever going to see Belichick wearing this, but I mean, I would probably assume that somewhere down the line we could see more.
It'd be awesome to see him wear it at the Super Bowl. Like if they get a big lead or something, all of a sudden you see him on the sidelines wearing this fan-made poncho.
Yeah, or even maybe something in like the pregame, like warm-ups, or maybe like if they were to win and they like have the post-game champagne shower in the locker room, maybe he puts it on and gets champagne all over it. Who knows? But let's see, Dave, did you have any thoughts on either the gifts that the Patriots played or that Brady or Belichick received? It looks like we temporarily lost him. No, it looks like we did just get
David.
No, he tried muting me before, but yeah, I don't really have any. I think media day is just like, again, a nod off to the media. Obviously to get one-on-one questions about how do you become great like you. To me, I'm all about the game and the players, not how the media sees the players or the interactions. Even though it's the closest thing the fans can talk to players, for me, Super Bowl week is all about the big game and nothing else.
Well, how about this storyline that I'm sort of interested by? So, Ian, you know that I'm big into like uniforms, like which uniforms hold historical significance, all of that stuff. The Rams have elected to wear their throwback blue and gold uniforms back from the last time that they were actually in the Super Bowl, except this time the home version, or last time they won the Super Bowl, but the home version. So I found that to be interesting. I think it's only the second time in the history of the NFL that a team is wearing throwback uniforms for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, but like I say, it kind of goes back. The Rams are in a weird jersey and helmet situation right now. So they went back. So after, it was a couple years ago during their Color Rush game against the Seahawks, that they brought out the Ram with the white instead of with the straight gold. And it appeared the Rams really liked that, so they made that their official helmet. But I believe it was some sort of NFL policy made it where they couldn't change their uniforms for at least 2 years.
2020. Yeah, 2020 is a new uniform year.
Yeah, so because of that, now they have these kind of awkward situations where if they wear with the white regular uniform, it doesn't look that terribly bad. But you wear with the blue, and it looks very awkward. So that's why we've seen them wear the throwbacks a lot this year. Typically, when they wear the blue jersey, typically it's always the throwback. So it makes sense for them in this case because typically I believe it's the higher seed that gets to pick the jersey first. Or since they're both the 2 seed in this case, I believe it would be the I'm not sure exactly how it worked in this case, but I think it was the right choice by the Rams to go with the throwback because if they would have went with the regular blue, it would have looked pretty bad.
Yeah, something for like, especially what you talk about the blue uniform, it's because they can't change the uniform, but they can change the helmet color and they can change the pants colors. So that first year, I think it was 2 years ago when they first moved to LA, they had 3 different shades of blue on their uniform. So this last year, and well, that year and this last year, they embraced the faux back of the LA Rams of a long time ago. And I think until their new uniforms come out, I like it a lot.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. It'll be really cool to see those when they do come out on Sunday, and hopefully it brings them some good luck because last time they did wear those, they did win. So it does help them out a little bit, but let's cover one more topic about opening night, and it's again talking about Brady and also comments that were made by the Los Angeles Rams. I'm trying to remember the quarterback. It was trying to remember. Roby Coleman had made comments about Tom Brady. It was basically saying how like with him getting older, I'm not exactly along the lines of him being like predictable or starting like wear down a little bit. And then we saw Tom Brady react to those comments, and he didn't really have a reaction to it. So are you guys surprised that he didn't react or as we would expect him to?
I think he's probably reacting internally, would be my best guess, because we know that Brady's always used what people have said as bulletin board material. So that either means that he's too motivated to care about this, which is bad for the Rams, or he's secretly seething about this and just building it up in his mind to go off on the Rams defense during the Super Bowl. So I think that it made its way to Brady in a way that's going to be negative for the Rams defense.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Roby Coleman is just kind of embracing the villain aspect that was given to him in the championship game. And he's kind of had the brightest spotlight since then. I think he took that time to really try to be the voice of this Rams defense because there's no really other vocal leader on this team. Even Aaron Donald, who is probably the leader of that team, isn't really outspoken. So now you have someone on that Rams defense who does play a lot. You know, he's the starting nickel cornerback for the team, and he's been given this platform because of his notoriety. I think it's just healthy trash talk. And the reaction by Tom Brady kind of goes back to his media day response to the kid about the haters is, you know, you just kind of gotta love them. You gotta just roll off the back, just let people do their thing, but in the end, you gotta play your own game.
Yeah. I think Brady, obviously, he's heard it from people that, like, obviously, with him being older, that he's obviously going to be wearing that. But we haven't seen it from him. So I think Roby Coleman was just trying to start something, maybe try to get something out of Brady, but Brady's just used to saying this. But now people have been saying this about him for like 5 years or so now. So he's used to it. He doesn't really need to say anything, and I think he made the smart choice by not saying anything about this. And we'll see on Sunday if he is starting to wear down, because, I mean, you never know. It could be the time for him to start wearing down. But speaking of the Super Bowl, let's start looking at some of the bets that are going on. So there are a lot of interesting bets that are being laid out for the Super Bowl. So let's start off with some of the simple bets. So first one, we'll go back and forth in this. So what do you guys think the coin toss will be, heads or tails? Ryan, we'll start with you.
It's going to be tails for sure, 100%. Put money down on it.
All right, David?
I'm going to be contrarian. It's going to be heads.
Okay. I go with a famous saying one of my high school coaches told me that's tails never fail. So I'm going to go tails in here. All right. The over-under on the national anthem. Currently, it's set at 110.5 seconds. So you guys, over or under?
I mean, who's singing it? Is it Fergie? Is it?
I'm trying to remember. They had just like announced. It was weird how they announced like the anthem and the halftime shows because they waited a lot longer this year than usual. Let me just make sure I have it right. But so
I think it looks like it's Gladys Knight.
yes, that's who it is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go over.
So, okay.
Same.
See, Super Bowl. That's tough. I'm gonna go the under here. I'm gonna say she gets it finished quickly.
Okay.
That's a
I don't
toss-up.
know. Everybody watching, I would want to make that go as long as possible.
Same. Enough screen time as you can get. Those seconds are expensive, man.
Yeah,
Very
think
true.
how much it costs those advertisers. You're getting that for, I don't know, probably free. You might have to pay to, I don't know, do you have to pay to sing the anthem at the Super Bowl, or is it like an honor bestowed upon you?
Probably both.
Yeah, I'd probably say it's a little. But
Like
let's move
Marine,
on.
like the
So-
Super Bowl halftime shows you need to be there. So I mean, maybe it's probably the same thing.
Very true. All right, let's do a little bit of game prediction or game bets right now. So, who's going to be the first one to score a touchdown?
I'm going to go Sony Michelle.
All right, David.
I'm going with Robert Woods.
All right,
Ooh, we picked different teams.
I'm going to go C.J. Anderson.
Wow. Interesting
The
pick.
guy that's been getting a lot more touches. I think that they're going to get a goal line carry for him. They're going to give him and Gurley a goal line carry, but I think Anderson will be the one that converts on it. So next one will be how many individual players will have a reception for the Patriots, Ryan?
10.
David?
I'm going to say 6.
Okay, I'm going to go in the middle here because I'm going to go 8 because 10 seems a little high. 6 seems like could happen, but Brady always seems to find a decent number of receivers. So
He'll throw to at least 3 running backs, probably 5 receivers, 2 tight ends, and maybe throw in an offensive lineman.
very true. Speaking of, so Brady, who's he going to throw his first pass to? Or no, actually, I just read that. Will he complete his first pass?
James White. You complete 99.9% within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage. Dinking, dunking your way all day. James White.
So I'm going to go, yeah, he does complete his first pass.
Okay, and who do you think he'll complete it to? We'll continue on with it a little bit.
I'm going to say Sony Michelle. I'm going big on Sony. I think he's going to have a good first drive with the Patriots. I think he's going to catch a screen pass, get Brady an easy completion to start out the game.
I'm going to say that this guy could be a key factor for them, and he needs to get this guy open early on, and I think that's going to be Gronk. So I think he'll complete his first one, and it'll be to Gronk. All right. So let's go on to some kind of different ones. So we're going to go a little bit away from the game here for this one. So will either Jim Nance or Tony Romo say Hot Atlanta since the game is in Atlanta?
I don't think Tony Romo is going to be able to resist saying Atlanta.
Same.
Yeah, even if it's Tony Romo seems like the logical guy, but I could definitely see Jim Nance saying it as well. Will any player that scores a touchdown do the Dirty Bird as their celebration?
That's a great question. I'm going to go no.
I'm going to go with no, too. The Rams have a lot of fans in Atlanta right now, and I don't think they're going to mess that up.
I feel like that would be something they would do more if they were playing in Atlanta. You know, like I just don't, just because it's the city, like celebrating a different team other than your own at your moment at the Super Bowl seems like it would be a strange thing to do.
Okay, I'm gonna say that it's a tough one. In my opinion, I think it is, but man, I think someone's going to do it. I think it makes sense for a running back to do it, but I just think that it has to happen. But
do you know what I think it's going to do? I think it's going to be a New England defensive play, either a sack or interception. I think that's where it's going to come from.
Yeah, I could definitely could happen there.
Because
could possibly bring up a flag since it's not on a touchdown, but I mean, it would make sense for it to happen there too.
yeah, because you're talking about New England obviously beat Atlanta a couple years ago. You're in Atlanta. It's a perfect place to rub the salt in. If they're up, big play, defensive play, I think it's going to happen.
Okay. Last one we'll do. So, which soft drink brand will air the first commercial on Super Bowl Sunday? Would it be Coca-Cola or Pepsi?
Ooh. Pepsi.
I'm going to say Pepsi because they're going to advertise for the halftime show.
That's a good call.
That's a good call, and I was about to say Coke before you mentioned that, so I'm going to say Pepsi just because of that mention. So, thank you for reminding me of that. But let's go to some predictions here. So, Ryan, as we've talked about the last few weeks and at the beginning of the year, you did predict this Super Bowl matchup, and you did predict the Patriots to beat the Rams in the Super Bowl. So, we all know that's who you're going to pick. So, what kind of score do you have?
I'm going to say that it is going to be 38 to 27.
Okay.
38 to 27. I think it's going to be close through most of the game, and then the Patriots are going to open up a 2-score advantage to finish it off.
All right. How about you, David?
I think it's going to be something close as well. I'm going to say 34-30 Rams.
Oh, okay.
I want to go on record as saying I hope the Rams win, and I hope my prediction wins.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of in the same loop as David, and I'm also in the same loop as Madden 2019, as they predicted the Rams to beat the New England Patriots. I'm saying the Rams win 31 to 27. I think it will be a close game. I think the Rams are going to have to dig themselves out of an early hole, but I think they come back.
In that Madden simulation, how many of those catches were through players' bodies? I want to know that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting how the simulations work out for it, too, because it seems like they predict it correctly every other year. Last year, they thought New England would win, but they ended up losing. So it'll be interesting to see if this every other year prediction thing keeps working out.
There was a streak there for a while that it was like the early 2000s. I remember it was like one of the Buccaneers, Raiders, whatever year that was. That sort of time where it was always the losers of the Madden simulated game were won. I think it was like a 6-year span where the losers of that simulated game won the Super Bowl.
Huh.
Yeah, and I remember it was a few years ago where the Patriots and the Seahawks played, where they actually predicted the score and pretty close to what happened near the end of the game. They predicted that New England was going to score with, I believe it was around 2 minutes left, and that they would get a turnover at the end of the game. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe something like that will happen again, but I don't know. It's kind of hard to predict. But that's just something we'll have to wait until Sunday. Like I said, game starts at 6:30 Eastern time. For those of you who don't know the time, make sure to stick around for that game. Commercials are always fun to watch, and then also the halftime performance by Maroon 5 and Travis Scott and Big Boy. But let's move on to some football that we saw this past week. So this past week we had the Pro Bowl, which was in Orlando, and we also saw the Skills Challenge, which was on the Thursday before the Pro Bowl. So let's discuss both of these. So what were you guys' thoughts on the Skills Challenge? Did it intrigue you guys at all?
It didn't intrigue me as much as it used to for some reason. I don't know why. When I was younger, I used to be really interested by the Pro Bowl because they always sort of had some kind of skills competition. You know, they would do like punt, pass, and kick type stuff. And I don't know, the more that they get into it, the more they're making it very specific. Like they have more moving targets, and it's kind of gone away from the purity of the skill, and now it's gone to more of a flashy, showy sort of thing. So I wasn't as interested in it this year. I like that they got Von Miller in the passing challenge, and I like that we got to find out that he's actually terrible at throwing the ball. So I think that was probably the extent of my intrigue, was seeing some players doing things that they don't normally do and seeing if they're actually good at it or not.
I honestly think they're more interesting than the Pro Bowl itself. I think this has become a consolation prize for people who don't go to the Super Bowl. And in NFL, you're more likely to get hurt off of torn ACLs. So the risk factor of it is not really worth it as well. I mean, you look at the NFC quarterback rosters. Look who dropped out. Drew Brees dropped out. Aaron Rodgers dropped out. So they had to promote Dak Prescott and Mitchell Trubisky, who are probably their fifth, sixth best NFC quarterbacks. I think that the Pro Bowl itself is really watered down, and I think the skills competition should be highlighted even more. But at the same time, I think the NFL is trying so hard to make the NFL version of the dunk contest and the three-pointing contest, which are, probably as big a deal as the NBA All-Star Game. And I think the NFL is trying too hard to make it like that. But at the same time, I would prefer the skills challenges over the Pro Bowl game itself.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, I watched it obviously the night it came out, and I watched part of it the next day because it was still on the next day. And looking at it, there's some of the challenges that I thought were pretty interesting. I liked the throwing challenge where they actually had another player. So I thought that was a unique twist to it. Kind of made me think a little bit of the old quarterback challenges that they had late 90s, early 2000s that we've talked about before. So that part I did like. Some of them kind of just didn't really make sense in my opinion. The first one that they did where the receivers had to make different types of catches. There was only one where Mitch Trubisky took almost a minute to throw at one station. And, I mean, obviously the other quarterbacks did a pretty decent job and got it done quickly, but he took almost a minute, and it kind of right away got off to a bad start because of that. So I think some of these they have to change a little bit. Some of them I thought were enjoyable to watch, but I kind of agree with David on this. They're trying to make it a little bit too much like the NBA All-Star Weekend with their skills competitions. They're definitely, I think at this point, enjoyable to watch still, but I think they need to try and figure things out a little bit to give viewers attentions more. And also, you had a lot more unknown names, I would say, in this year's Pro Bowl skills competition. So that kind of brought the value down.
Yeah, and it's just never going to be the NBA All-Star Weekend, especially because it's basically the dead zone between the season and the Super Bowl. So fans aren't like, oh, the Pro Bowl is my last chance to see NFL players for a while because you still have the Super Bowl. So I still maintain what we talked about last week with the fact that it's now before the Pro Bowl is a big mistake and intrigue for this. I just think that after the Pro Bowl would be much better and it would get people more interested because then it really would be your last chance to see some of these players and to see, NFL football for a while. But the way they have it now, it just sort of eliminates the intrigue. It's never going to be the All-Star Weekend in the NBA.
Yeah, let's switch topics. Let's talk a little bit about the Pro Bowl. David, I want to get your thoughts on this because Ryan and I discussed this a little bit last week. We had just mentioned it about the date of the Pro Bowl. He had said that if they changed it back towards the last game of the actual season, that would make more sense and give people more attention. I made a thought that they should change it actually to later on in the year, probably like about a month or so before training camp. That way it gets people hyped for the football season and let them know that football's right there. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that they should change it, and when do you think they should change it to?
I think they should go back to after the Super Bowl. Right now, it's like the sad consolation prize for the losing teams. Like Patrick Mahomes and all the Chiefs guys seem to be having fun out there. But, Cameron Jordan came on to say, like, this is meaningless. Drew Brees dropped out completely. I mean, it's just like too much of a sore subject for two teams. Like right off the bat, you have two losing championship teams coming in, and the Pro Bowl is your consolation prize, which is it's a joke. It's a joke. And so I think a lot of time, like especially what happened after Brady winning the Super Bowls, was like the Patriots get to show off. And I'd rather have you're celebrating the crowning of a new winner of your league than celebrating teams not being in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you definitely touched that on there. I did say that I do expect them to change it again within the next few years. So I do think that's something they're going to keep evaluating and looking into. But if you look at the game, I would honestly say the game wasn't as impressive as I don't know if a lot of people are thinking it, but it wasn't, I don't think, as exciting of a game as we've seen in recent years. It was a kind of a blowout of a game. The AFC won 26-7. We saw that Patrick Mahomes and Jamal Adams were the MVPs of the game. And it just kind of seemed out of sync. They played in not the best weather. It was raining during the game. Did you guys think it was kind of a disappointment this year?
Yeah, it was definitely a disappointment, but at the same time, I don't think anybody really had very high expectations for it. The players that were in, a lot of the ones that actually got voted in, dropped out and couldn't make it. They've been trying to turn it into, a high-scoring, no defense sort of game. So we saw a lot of poor tackling, a lot of no tackling, a lot of, it's like half between touch football and tackle football. It's sort of a weird dynamic. It wasn't exciting. There wasn't a lot going on there. The interesting part about it is that if you actually look at the scores, the people that scored the touchdowns in the Pro Bowl, it was a lot of random people or people that aren't stars, or in one case, Jalen Ramsey, a defensive star. But otherwise, you had Austin Hooper, you had Anthony Sherman, you had Eric Ebron. So you didn't have a lot of the big-name guys actually getting into the end zone.
Don't forget fullback legend Anthony Sherman.
Yeah, fullback legend. Had a pretty solid game. He's been a big-time player for the Chiefs. He had almost 100 yards receiving. So even though it's a Pro Bowl, that's pretty impressive for a fullback.
That is true. That's probably his best game of his career.
Yeah. When I looked at it, obviously I watched the game, but it just didn't feel like it was good football, in my opinion. You could obviously tell there's some obvious rule changes or some different rules in the Pro Bowl that they have in the regular season. There were no kickoffs. They had to play a specific type of defense. There was no blitzing. And it just felt out of sorts, and it didn't feel comfortable. And it kind of made me think of the question that we did post this week in regards to, do you still watch the Pro Bowl? And looking at Twitter, it was a pretty close result. About 54% of people said that they don't watch the Pro Bowl. However, on Facebook, a high number of people said that they don't watch the Pro Bowl. It was at about 72%. So, with that being said, is this something that the NFL just might consider to get rid of over the next couple of years?
The NFL is always looking to find a way to eliminate injury. So specifically for that reason, I could see them looking to eliminate the Pro Bowl just to make sure that nobody gets hurt. I think that more than eliminating it, I could see them trying to change it or scale it down. I think it's always going to be something. Like, even if at some point it's just like an award ceremony, it's always going to be a thing. But I'm not sure that it'll always be this big, real game of football. They might even just have the skills competition sometime, which that would be fine. I think they're going to keep tinkering with it. They want to find a way to make it work out okay without, being hugely disappointing every year.
I think that the format for the Pro Bowl needs to change. It is a celebration of like the whole year, all these players. You want to celebrate the fans acknowledging good players every year. That's why the Pro Bowl is. So I think the skills challenge is one thing, but what I really would like to see is more fan involvement. I remember way long time ago, I think around one of Brady's first Super Bowls, that fans were actually calling some of the plays. Like, they were just like tap into whoever the head coach was. I remember this one year was like Andy Reid, and they're like do like a double reverse flea flicker or like some crazy, shenanigans, and they did it. And I think if you involve more fan interaction with it, I know we're starting NFL, NBA, MLB. They're going to start experimenting with this kind of idea. We already saw the little fan interaction with the refs, even with this instant betting systems that are coming in where you can bet money to see if these guys are going to make these free throws. I think it would be great to have fans vote on plays. Like, download the app, the Pro Bowl app, engage with us, talk to the players. Who do you want in? Like, who do you want to see get the ball next? and even something, maybe they pull up like 6 plays, fans vote on the play, and it's the first play of the next series, or like whatever. I think there needs to be more fan involvement, because as a fan, these games are awful to watch. Like you said, no one's trying. The refs make the decision if it's a two-hand touch play or a tackle play, and you just don't know which one it's going to be. And then all of a sudden you see, Ezekiel Elliott about to spin off tackle, and he gets called down as he's like racing downfield because they decided to make it a two-hand touch play to, again, to make sure the players are safe. I get it. I get why they're doing it. Like, players don't want to get hurt. Players don't want to ruin their careers over a nonsense game. But there has to be some kind of change.
Yeah, and looking at it, I kind of thought of a weird scenario that I don't expect this to happen, but I think it's something that I think the fans would enjoy more, and I think that the players could benefit from. Now, the NHL All-Star Game was this past weekend as well, and they changed it up recently where instead of having it one conference against the other conference, they split them up into their divisions. There's 2 divisions in each conference, and then those divisions go at it in a 3-on-3 tournament style. I think that the NFL should kind of do this, split it up into like 7-on-7, do it like a flag football thing. So get like 4, 5, 6 teams going, have them play, make it a whole day thing. They can get a few games in. I think it'll be exciting. We can see a lot of crazy, unique matchups. Don't necessarily have to see players play their own position. We can see linemen play like quarterback or receivers. Just change things up a little bit. Try and get some sort of new spark going. Now, like I said, I don't expect anything like this to happen, but I think that this is something that the NFL should try doing, because I think the fans would be excited, at least some sort of exciting action.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. They have to do something if they really want to keep pushing the Pro Bowl. I still think biggest thing would be to just change it again to be after the Super Bowl so that all players from all teams can be there. Because, as David was saying, it is this weird sort of consolation prize, but it's also at the same time like it's an extra prize to not have to go to the Pro Bowl because it means you made the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like, it's basically just in there as a second place finisher for the teams that didn't make the Super Bowl right now, which is weird. It's not a celebration of everybody, which is what it should be.
What are your thoughts on it, David?
Yeah, I just agree with that. There does have to be some kind of like Pro Bowl thing. This NFL Pro Bowl games have been around in some iteration since the 40s. So I just think push it back to the end of the Super Bowl, after the Super Bowl. Let's see, Aaron Donald. Let's see Tom Brady if they want, Give them choice. Give more of these great players that work their way into the Super Bowl. Like, look at the Rams. The Rams are full of, like, all pros and great players. And when they don't go to the Super Bowl, we have to bring in these players who, quote-unquote, don't deserve it as much. And I think after the Super Bowl would be a much better solution.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely do think that the NFL is going to venture or looking into changing the date again. Because like I said, I feel like viewership's down and the competitiveness is down. That's something that they need to change. So like I said, I do expect something to change over the next few years. It's just a matter of when that'll happen. But we've talked about the Super Bowl. We've talked now about the Pro Bowl. Let's move on to a different bowl that happened this past weekend. That was the Senior Bowl. And we're going to talk about 2 of the high-profile quarterbacks that were in the Senior Bowl. And that was Drew Lock of Missouri and Daniel Jones out of Duke. So we saw Drew Lock started the game for in the Senior Bowl and put up some good numbers. We saw his athletic ability. We saw him throw the accurate ball, deep ball. But we ended up seeing Daniel Jones of Duke win the MVP of that game, and he also looked impressive. So looking at these 2 quarterbacks, do you think that both of these guys could be first-round picks this year?
I think 100% they could be first-round picks this year, and they really did both help themselves by playing well in the Senior Bowl. So if you're looking at mock drafts right now, there's not a whole lot of teams that need a quarterback 1 through 5. But then after that, we have a lot of teams that could be taking quarterbacks. You have the Giants, you have the Jaguars, the Broncos, Cincinnati, you never know. The Dolphins, you never know. Redskins. So there's a lot of teams there that could be looking for a quarterback. And now that these guys showed that they could potentially be solid players coming into the NFL, there's no reason why a team's not going to take a risk in picking one of these guys. I think that Dwayne Haskins is still going to be the first quarterback off the board, but I wouldn't be surprised if Daniel Jones actually usurped him. I think it would be close between those two guys.
Yeah, I agree. I think Dwayne Haskins should be the first guy off the board. I think the process of all this will help Dwayne Haskins the most because he is only a one-year starter. And so all these private workouts, these pro days, the combine are all going to help him or hurt him the most. So I think he's got the most to gain and most to lose. I think at this point, Daniel Jones and Drew Lock are probably going to be of the first 3-4 quarterbacks off the board, considering what happens with Kyler Murray. But I do think that even though there is no top 5 quarterback needy teams, I think that just makes it so much more of an unpredictable jumping point, because the Giants, Jacksonville, Denver, they're all in striking range to get into that top 5. Now it's just, is it going to be a draft day deal? Are we going to be looking at a pre-draft day deal like what happened with the Jets and the Redskins when they went up for RG3? There's just a lot of time left for the draft. We got about 3 months. There's a lot of stuff to happen, and we're just getting started.
Yeah, and looking at it, I've been a fan of both these quarterbacks. Drew Lock, I was a guy particularly a fan of because he always put up big numbers for Missouri. We saw some of his mobile ability this year as well. Daniel Jones was a guy that not many people really heard of, but has shown prowess that could make him end up being a first-round pick. So I think that both these guys have that potential. It's just a matter of what teams are actually going to take that risk. Will anyone trade into the first round, or will anyone be lucky enough to get any of these quarterbacks at the end of the first round? I don't think both are going to go in the first round. I think one ends up going. I'm not sure which one that's going to be yet, just because we still have 3 months to go, and we still obviously have the combine and pro days left. But I do think one of these guys will end up being a first-round pick. It's just a matter of who's going to be that guy that takes that step up. But before we move on, did you guys have any other thoughts? Did anything else stand out to you in the Senior Bowl? Or was it kind of just these two guys that kind of stood out the most?
Honestly, it just showed how little the senior draft class is becoming. This year was a record total of underclassmen declaring. We're talking about the reformation of Pro Bowl. I think we have to start looking at the formation of our college all-star games. We have the East-West Shrine game, which are kind of like your fringe day 2, day 3 guys, like really low profile guys who are given a chance to prove themselves. I think that's one of the games. Senior Bowl obviously is all seniors invited and graduates. I think with how prevalent these underclassmen are declaring, I think the Senior Bowl needs maybe not open up to underclassmen, but possibly create an additional week for underclassmen to come in and show their strengths. Because right now, the underclassmen just kind of go off what we know from their college games. There is no all-star games other than the games they put them in. I think now more than ever, we need another format to evaluate these young players coming in, especially because the AAF and the XFL are going to be knocking on their doors trying to get them. So the more the NFL puts time into these young players coming into their pro days, whatever league it may be, the NFL should be the ones directing them to their league and not leaking off into that AAF.
Yeah, very true. And though this will lead to potential opportunities for those players that don't end up getting drafted in the NFL, it will lead to those secondary opportunities besides the Canadian Football League, which does lead us into our next topic. And we are a little under 2 weeks now away from the beginning of the AAF, the Alliance of American Football. We talked a little bit last week on who we're excited to see of the 8 teams. And this week we're going to talk about which coach we're most we're most excited to see. So, of the 8 coaches, I'm not sure which one of you two want to start. Who's more excited about it? But which coach are you excited to see come out on the weekend of February 8th and 9th in the AAF?
Well, I am most excited to see Mike Singletary. And I am most excited to see him for the single reason that this means we could possibly get another good soundbite from Mike Singletary. So you remember him with the 49ers when he was basically yelling about how his team had no effort and how he wants his team to be mentally and physically strong. I think we could definitely get something new with that. He's going to add some fire to the the allegiance of American football?
I did do some more research. It's the Alliance. We had it wrong for quite some time, so let's make sure we get it right with the Alliance, not the Allegiance
of American football. I think he's going to add some fire, though. I think he's going to want his team to be fired up, and you can see the guy's passion anytime he talks about football. Anytime you see him coaching, he's going to bring something good to this league, and I'm very excited to see him. I might even watch a game of the Memphis Express just to see Mike Singletary take the sideline, to be honest.
I'm a big fan of Steve Spurrier. I mean, we're talking about like one of the best college coaches ever. And really, there's no one else of his stature in this league. He did not do well in his NFL appearances. And he was also the head coach of the Tampa Bay Bandits during the USFL. So this is his third quote-unquote pro chance at coaching, at being a head coach. And I really think he has the most to prove out of all these coaches. And so he's got my vote for who I'm more excited for. I am an Orlando Apollo fan.
Yeah, I definitely think that they're going to be a team to look out for, and I think you have to make them an early favorite just because of the full ball coach in Steve Spurrier. But I'm going to say that Mike Martz is the most exciting one here. And the reason I say that is because this guy was the offensive coordinator and later became the head coach of the St. Louis Rams. And when he became their coach, what did they become? The greatest show on turf. That's how good that team got when he became the OC and then the head coach of that team. He led them to multiple Super Bowls. He's a very dynamic offensive coach. And I think that he can bring that dynamic offense back into or bring it to the AAF. I think he can spark some teams. And he's also the head coach of San Diego, which is getting football back after the Chargers moved out to Los Angeles. So I think this is a very exciting moment for San Diego, not just because they get football back, but because they get a guy who knows offense back in San Diego. So I think he could be the most exciting of the 8 coaches.
I was going to say him as my second choice for sure, but I just really like the idea of somebody with a ton of visible fire being on the sideline. But I'm excited for Martz too. That's going to be an interesting offensive scheme he's going to run.
What are you guys' thoughts on Michael Vick being the offensive coordinator for the Atlanta team?
I don't know how I feel about it yet. I didn't even know Michael Vick was interested in coaching at all or anything. I was never really a big fan of Michael Vick even before the incident happened with him and the dogfighting thing. So it's not going to attract my viewership at all to have Michael Vick around the league.
All right, how about you, David?
I like Michael Vick. I mean, what he is as a coach, I don't really know. I mean, that's going to be for him to prove to everyone else. If he proves to be, a good coach, I'm more than interested. But I'm looking for more than just a name.
Yeah, looking at it, it'll just be interesting to see because we've seen this trend recently in the NFL where we see a lot of these high-profile guys get opportunities being minority coaches as either like offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, or head coaches. And some of them, we see them succeed in positions. Other, more recently, we've seen the trend of them not succeeding and end up losing a job. So it'll be interesting to see if he can find some success in Atlanta and if he's able to keep that success enough to continue to have a job in the AAF, along with some of the other coaches that the league did hire. So, like I said, they start the weekend of February 8th and 9th. Those games will be on CBS and CBS Sports Network. So if you do not have either one of those channels, make sure you try to subscribe to them or pay for them if you're able to. But we are getting towards the end of the show, so as usual, we like to finish off with some fantasy football talk. So we're going to talk about an interesting guy, and that guy is Le'Veon Bell. So as you know, last year, a lot of people picked this guy high, not really knowing what was going to happen. And as a result, a lot of those people, unfortunately, suffered the consequences and were able to either do that well or had to make some last-ditch effort to make playoffs. So looking at this year, we honestly don't know what's going to happen with him. Will somehow Pittsburgh keep him? Will he be in a new city? Based off of this, since he hasn't played in over a year now, where do you think we see Le'Veon Bell get drafted in fantasy football, average-wise? And off of that, where do you think he'll play next year?
I think the second question is more difficult than the first question because we have not got a hint of anything as to where Le'Veon Bell is going to go or who would be interested in Le'Veon Bell next year or what the price tag is going to be or if anybody's willing to pay what Le'Veon Bell wants. I think we can all agree that it's highly unlikely that Le'Veon Bell is going to be back with the Steelers next year, but it's unclear whether he'll go to a team and be the primary running back or if he's going to go to a team that already has a decent running back and somebody's going to want him to kind of split carries. You would think that for what he's asking, a team that would bring him in would want him to be their featured guy. So he should still probably, assuming he has a place to play, be drafted in the first or second round because that's where his talent level is. He's a first-round talent, and it just depends on if his situation is good enough to warrant an early-round pick. Because I picked him this year, and I got burned for it.
Yeah, I'm going to say when he lands, he's going to be happy. When he lands, he's going to play somewhere. My bet for where he's going to go is Indianapolis. That'd be my number one. As of next year, before going into this offseason, the Indianapolis Colts have over $100 million in free cap space. $100 million. That is more than enough to pay Le'Veon Bell for 3 years. You know, you're going to have some guys come in and towards the end of their contracts, they could probably even give him like $50 million next year, like all wadded up. Make sure like you put some incentive performance bonuses in there, you know, and he can be good to go. But I mean, not really, but I think Indianapolis is going to be a place he'll land. I think the New York Jets are close second. They have a lot of cap space. Cleveland Browns, possibly. But anywhere he goes, people are not going to invest all of your time in Le'Veon Bell because you do know that he has all of this vocal opinions. If something goes wrong, he's going to let teams know. He's going to sit out. He's going to do all these things. So teams have to have a backup plan. And why I say the Colts are the next best thing is because they already have a startable running back, a very good young running back in Marlon Mack. He's a great complementary to him. I think Le'Veon Bell is going to be the Colt next year.
It's an interesting pick, especially since, like you said, Marlon Mack had a great year coming off of injury and definitely showed that he could be a number one back, especially in the postseason as well. So if they were to do that, that would be I wouldn't say it's a surprise pick, but it'd just be one of those picks where you didn't see it coming and shocks me. Looking at, I'll start with draft. I do think he's still possibly a first-round talent. I could see him slip out of the first-round fantasy, though, just because of the fact that he hasn't played in a year. So, yeah, he might be in great shape, but he might not be in the best football shape because he took the year off. So it'll be interesting to see if this causes him to slip towards the end of the first round in most leagues or start of the second round. But I have 3 teams in mind for where he could be last year. I'm going to first start off in Florida. So there's 2 teams in Florida in mind that I think could work. One's the Miami Dolphins. And the reason I say that is because their running back situation is kind of iffy. Frank Gore suffered an injury at the end of the year. Not sure if he'll be back. They also have Kenyon Drake, who was kind of inconsistent. But you bring in a guy like Bell who can maybe you look at Drake could be like the third down type of back, or maybe just like a guy that use Bell a little bit. I think that could work out a little bit. Obviously, there's a lot of questions to look at in Miami, like the quarterback situation and all that. But I think that if he's looking to be like the for sure number one guy, I think Miami would make the most sense. Another team in Florida I think could work could be the Tampa Bay Bucks. And the reason why I say that is because you get an offensive-minded head coach in Bruce Arians that come out of retirement. You have a young, good quarterback in Jameis Winston. You have one of the best receivers in the game in Mike Evans. And you also have O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate as your tight ends. So those are a lot of weapons that you already have on offense. And you put Le'Veon Bell back there, where their running back situation wasn't necessarily in the best shape last year with Payne Barber, Ronald Jones, Jacquizz Rodgers. And that team becomes seriously dangerous on offense. Yes, they have some questions to answer on the defensive side, but you add a game changer like Bell, I think that could maybe work things out a little bit, especially with the first-year new coach and Bruce Arians. And then this last one, which I kind of think is kind of a dark horse pick, I think Oakland could be a possibility. The reason why I say this is because we saw what they did this past year. They basically traded away a lot of their talent. They got rid of a lot of their talent. They got rid of almost everything they can. They still don't have a place to play technically next year. John Gruden's the coach. He's a crazy guy. But I think his craziness is something that can maybe intrigue a guy like Le'Veon Bell, who did something crazy this year and sat out a full season. I think you put him with John Gruden, and that could be like the weirdest combo in the NFL. But it also could be like the best combo in the NFL because you know he's going to be the guy. Derek Carr had a down year. They need some sort of spark on offense. They didn't have it this year at all. Le'Veon Bell could be that guy. And you look at they moved to Vegas in about a year. He could be the focal point of the Vegas Raiders. I think that'd be pretty exciting to see too. Any thoughts on those?
I personally disagree on the Tampa and Miami one. I feel right now for next year, I just believe Miami ranks 24 with 14 million left, and Tampa has 29th best 6 million free cap. Just starting off with the money situations, I don't think those are going to be landing spots for Bell. On top of running backs are a luxury. As we've seen in Kansas City after Kareem Hunt and Pittsburgh after Bell left, and even Connor left, you see all these running backs have great success in these roles in the offenses. I think the Oakland pick is actually pretty good because even though they're not a running back away from winning it, they've got a lot of money, and I think he fits the mold of what John Gruden's trying to do on top of having all the money available to give to Bell.
How about you, Ryan?
I actually agree with the Raider pick because if you think about it too, the Raiders have been looking for a running back for a really long time now. I mean, they had Latavius Murray, who was okay, and then after that they thought Marshawn Lynch would be the solution, and he obviously turned out to, be more of a distraction, more of a lackluster addition than everyone was hoping for in Oakland. And John Gruden is looking to revitalize that team. He's looking to rejuvenate. He's looking to turn over talent. So they have the space for Bell. They could bring him in and he could be an immediate difference maker to a team that is looking for a new identity and trying to get away from some of the old players like Amari Cooper and Khalil Mack that they had. They do have all those draft choices too now. So they aren't a running back away, but a running back could push them definitely in the right direction and start to sort of appease the fan base that's very unhappy with how this season went and with the players they gave up.
Yeah, and like I said, once the Super Bowl ends, this is going to be probably the main topic of the off season is where this guy is going to land. It's going to be literally one of those where, and every team I think might try to go for him. The attitude of the fact that he did sit out of the season could play a factor as well, but this is going to be one of the big sweepstakes of the NFL that we've seen in recent years. It's going to be exciting to see what happens, especially with Antonio Brown as well. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with this guy. It's likely he'll find a new home, and it could be a big fail for any of these teams. But we are unfortunately at that time where we are at the end of our show. Ryan, did you have anything you want to say at the end there?
Just thanks everybody for continuing to tune in and listen to us talk about the NFL and football. Glad that we're able to do this and start bringing in more guests now. So excited to have you too, David Anderson. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's been awesome.
All right, David, where can all our listeners follow you on social media?
Right now, my big one is Twitter. It's Daphud, DAPHUD. I post about a lot of football there. It's mainly, I'm really active during the off season, during draft time, which is coming up. I love posting things about it, and you'll see me live tweeting the Super Bowl.
That's cool. I'll tune in for
that. Yeah, that'll definitely be awesome. David, thank you again for coming on for this week's episode. Again, I want to thank everyone for listening to Touchdown Tuesdays, the official football podcast of Brew Sports. Make sure to listen to us each week on either iTunes, Google Play, or Spreaker. If you haven't already, give us a follow or a like on Facebook or Twitter. We are now over 150 followers on Twitter, and we have now reached 100 likes on Facebook. So thank you for, like I said, liking and following us. Continue to do that. Tell your friends to do it. Continue to get those numbers up for us. Again, thank you for listening this week. We'll look forward to talking to you next week after the Super Bowl, and then we're beginning to talk about the AAF for the next couple of months. Thank you again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week.